What's up, everybody? I'm a day late. Sorry about that, but I messed things up. My girlfriend has things happening on Mondays, and there's a lot of background noise, so I couldn't really record. I'm gonna try and figure that out for next week. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop into the Imperator Development Diary number 2 for the 4th of June, 2018. Now, I'm not gonna read this whole thing. There's a lot of words here, and I'm bad at reading out loud, so I'm gonna spare you that horrible cringiness. And we're just going to go ahead and talk about things that jumped out at me, and you can check out the dev diary yourself. I'll probably put a link in the description or something like that. So yeah, starting off here, they talk about how they like to organize maps, generally with provinces and then states grouping those provinces. In EU2, there's about 2 provinces in Sicily. In CK2, there's about 5. EU4 has 3, Hoi4 has 9, and in Imperator, there's going to be 23. That's pretty intense. That's a massive jump. They also mentioned that there's going to be 4 impassable mountain ranges just in Sicily alone, which means that there's a lot of tactics as to how you're going to move your armies around. Conquering Sicily isn't going to be just a simple little thing where you fight a couple armies and steamroll across. If an army wants to be squirrely and mess with you, they definitely can. Which means that hunting down, baiting armies, and doing all of that sort of stuff is going to be actually pretty interesting and hopefully much more fun than in previous games. Another cool thing that has kind of struck me since looking at all of this is they mention a little bit about how trade goods work, in that they come from cities and then move up to the province level to kind of interact with them. Having a war over a province really makes a lot of sense if that province has something that you desperately need. Say you're running low on grain and you really need that farm that's next door. You're really going to want to go and get that. Now, I don't expect the rest of the map to be this detailed. I just did a little bit of napkin math, looking up, land masses and stuff like that. And if you were to do the entire map of Europe more or less with this density, you'd end up with something like 8,000 cities, not provinces. I'm always going to mix that up, but it is what it is. You'd have something like 8,000 cities in Europe alone. Now, that's also including, northern Scandinavia and Iceland and all of that stuff. But the point still stands. You can't have a map this dense everywhere, so don't expect something like that for the entirety of the map. Regardless, the granularity in this game is going to be much more detailed, which is going to be amazing. I think that that's going to really help slow down large empires from conquering just wide swaths of land, because there's just so much of it. In EU4 or, any previous Paradox game, there really aren't that many provinces. I mean, there's a lot, don't get me wrong, but still, conquesting the world in a lot of those games can be done pretty quickly. Whereas in this, I mean, just the peace deals alone. If you wanted to take Sicily, you'd have to checkmark 23 different cities. That seems a little insane. That doesn't really fit with a lot of Paradox's previous design, where you probably take, 4 or 5 provinces or something like that. So, I mean, with that in mind, I would assume that taking, a third of Sicily in a war is probably more reasonable. But again, we have no idea, as these are just my thoughts. If it were going to be something like that, then that is a massive stumbling block for a large empire like, say, a Roman Empire trying to conquer the world. Just the fact that there's probably going to be truces, there's probably going to be downtime where you're going to have to manage your country before you can actually go back to war again, means that there's going to be a lot more work in conquering the world than you would expect in a Paradox game, which is already very high. After going over the basics of map design, they kind of go into the research team and how they're kind of coming up with the start date and talking about different events and things like that that really influence them on picking this start date. They're very firm on not changing the start date, which I think is great. Nobody ever picks a later start date. They always just pick the earliest one. It's really just a waste to set up a whole new start date, and I think it's a fine way to do the game. Some of the reasons that they talk about choosing this start date is the successor kingdoms in the east, where, Alexander's empire has kind of fallen apart, and there's a lot of interesting things happening there. There's also mention of the conquests of Britain and, Caesar running around up there. There's talk about Scandinavia and how Germanic tribes started to relocate from those regions into northern and central Germany. And then they also talk about, Ethiopia and the Dimt Kingdom. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I can't pronounce English words half the time, so I'm sorry, everybody, I can't pronounce these things. I try my best, but a lot of times I don't know, or I forget. They go on to talk a little bit about the Indian subcontinent and the Mauryan Empire and the Seleucus? I'm not even going to try. Sorry. But they mention, there's a lot of Greek traders in this time where they're going back and forth from Greece to India, trading things like fabrics and gemstones and spices and all of that stuff. So those are going to be very interesting and important things, I think, in the game. being able to secure trade routes all the way to India to get those high value trade items is probably going to bring you in a lot of gold. So if you are Rome and you're looking a little light in the pockets, you might be looking at Greece and those trade routes that you might be able to secure if you took it. I think this is going to be a great way to influence the way that empires grow and what their priorities are going to be in game. At the very end here, they mention a little bit about subjects and some interesting things about, political structures, but they don't really say much about it. They just kind of mention Anatolia and Judea here, so, there's definitely some interest in how, not necessarily vassalage, but subject nations are going to be in the game, and you'll probably have some fun ways to play in those kind of situations. Finally, they talk a little bit about their sources and stuff like that. Again, if you're checking out the dev diary, you'll be able to get to these things very easily on your own. I highly recommend you go check it out, just because I didn't talk about everything, I think one last thing while I'm mousing over here is I completely forgot to mention tin trade through the Bronze Age and stuff like that. It would be amazing to have trade goods that only pop up in certain areas and are vital to do certain things. I mean, they very much have talked about things like that with cavalry and iron and all of that, making heavy troops. And in EU Rome, it was very much the same way. You had to have iron to create heavy infantry and things like that. So I kind of hope that there's going to be a scarcity to resources that makes taking regions actually really important for the growth of an empire. It would be really cool to have to secure that iron mine in the north of Italy or whatever. I have absolutely no idea if there actually were any there. I'm just coming up with an example here. But yeah, having resources like that are vital to the growth of an empire and being able to conquer your other massive foes is going to be very cool. And I really hope that that's going to be a key part of the game. What resources you secure first are going to heavily influence, how you grow. This is all speculation. I have no idea if that's actually going to be the case. There may be iron and tin and junk everywhere, but we can always hope, right? I think that's about it for my thoughts on this. Again, the dev diary is in the description. Go check it out if you haven't already. I really hope that you guys have, because you guys seem very interested in this game, maybe even more so than me. History isn't really my strong suit, so I can't speak a lot to the things that they talk about here. I'm more of a mechanics-driven sort of guy. The history is always very fun to learn about, and playing a game is probably the best way for me to learn these sorts of things, because I see them happen, and then I think, what the hell is that about? And I go check it out on Wikipedia, and then look into the sources on there, or find some book or something about it, and it's always very fun. That's always been one of the best things about Paradox games for me. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, do all the things. What did they say? They say, like, smash those buttons or some bullshit like that. But yeah, if you like the video, throw a like or whatever. If you think your friend might be interested in it or something like that, go ahead and share it. All of that stuff really helps me out. It raises me up in the rankings and stuff like that, so that more people get to see the video. For now, if you want to continue talking to me about these things, maybe you have some cool ideas that I've completely missed, I would love to hear about it, and you can either throw those in the comments in the video, or you can also hop in the Discord that will be linked down below. That's my own personal one, where I'd love to, talk about cool things about the maps, maybe the resources that Paradox is using, interesting notes in history and all of that stuff. I love to hear about it. I've been talking with a couple people in there, and it's been very fun. So yeah, if you're interested in talking about the game, I would highly recommend that too.